DKB Ice Canal, Altenberg in Germany on a wet and windy Saturday morning. We're ready for the second heat, round 6 of the Wiesmann FIBT 2-man Bobsleigh World Cup. Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us despite the awful weather conditions. A good crowd here as ever in Altenberg, and I'm delighted to welcome alongside me in the booth the Olympic bobsleigh champion, Kaylee Humphries. Kaylee, well, conditions could be better, but we've still got a great race in prospect. Lyndon Rush, your teammate from Canada, in the top 3, stopping the Germans, sweeping the podium at the moment.
Yeah, he definitely did. Wasn't the best start, so, and definitely room for improvement. So hopefully we can see him move up and or prevent the German sweep. So we'll see what happens. But overall, you know, a great first run and a good start from Lyndon and King.
He's a couple of hundreds in front of Mani Mahata, and there's just 400s in the battle for the gold medal. And it's 2 drivers from the Altenberg track. The young 21-year-old Francesco Friedrich, who's now the 2- and 4-man junior world champion. He had the lead after a great first run, but he was overhauled by his more experienced teammate who won last year.
Yeah, I mean, the start is his benefit for sure for Friedrich. So he's got a lot of room. You're going to see him really move up. But these guys, man of the hour, great start, and you know, a really great run. So we'll see. It'll come down to consistency between the 2 top Germans, and you know, hopefully Lyndon can throw a wrench in there somewhere.
Well, it came down to who was best in the snow in last year's 2-man race. It'll come down to who's best in the rain in this year's. They can't catch a break with the weather at Altenberg in the last couple of seasons. Here's the way it looks then. 400s separating the battle for gold, 200s separating the battle for the remaining podium position, and nothing separating the battle right behind there. So the gaps are tiny in the top half dozen. Look at that, Loic Costerg of France in 7th place. Now, that would be a remarkable achievement. If he can hang on to that, that'll be comfortably his best result of his young career, the 20-year-old with a really good first run. Let's hope the nerves don't get to him. He's got a little while to wait before he has his second heat, and that'll be the first time in his formative World Cup career that has happened. Well, the air temperature +4 and a bit, and the ice hovering just below 0. Kaylee, the difficulty here, of course, is keeping ice frozen in +0 temperatures with rain pouring down it.
It definitely is. Ice, I mean, with all that water, it really just depletes and starts to wear away. And you crank up the refrigeration on the track, and it really just frosts up. And so there is a fine balance in there somewhere, but the track crew definitely has to work very hard to make sure that it doesn't affect, you know, the racers, but that their track doesn't melt away either. So definitely a challenge, and they're doing, you know, a great job so far. Yeah,
damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you don't turn on the refrigeration, you get whitewater rafting. If you do, you get whitewater rafting with frost on the edges. So it's a really tough job, but the Ice Meister here at Altenberg is regarded as one of the absolute experts in the business. Well, 18 sleds completed the first heat successfully. They'll go in reverse order of their performance. For Milan Janešek of Slovakia, then he gets the first start draw in the second heat, and for him it'll be a first time that he gets a second run this season, and that's the case for a number of the sliders as well. And normally our field is cut down to 20 after the first heat. There's no need to do that here, so everybody gets a second run. Once we get out of the fast, the slower of the guys, we get into the fast 8 that remain. An identical time rather, set by Simone Battazzo to John Jackson, so they're tied for 5th. Mani Mahata and Lyndon Rush, a couple of hundreds apart, and 400s separating the lead battle. So whatever else happens, it's going to be a nail-biter right to the end. And the local crowd here from Saxony, this former independent kingdom in the corner of Germany close to the Czech border, they will be hoping for a hometown win, as they got yesterday in the women's bobsleigh race from Kathleen Martin. The green colours of Saxony all over her bobsled, as they are of our top 2. Getting ready to go into the second deciding heat, round 6 of the Wiesmann FIBT 2-man Bobsleigh World Cup here at the DKB Ice Canal in Altenberg. Milan Janešek of Slovakia will get the heat underway. Here's brakeman Vladimir Simic. I might be right, I think, in saying that this is Simic's first 2-man start of the season. Seems to me that he spent more time on the back of the 4-man sled from Slovakia. Kaylee, these guys started 18th quickest. 5.67. If they can find anything at the start, that will all help.
5.82, that is way off the pace. Loaded fairly early. You see him down and in comfortably within the grooves, but on such a flat start here, I mean, that's going to be extremely hard, if not impossible, to come back from.
We saw in the women's race that the 30 or 40 minutes between the two heats had allowed the start area to get quite frosty. Now, of course, when your hand sticks to the refrigerator when it's frosty, same thing happens with the runners when it's frosty, so it might be a little slower for the first couple of sleds.
Yeah, it definitely will. The more sleds that run over those start grooves and the start, the quicker and the frost seems to kind of melt away, and so hopefully it'll pick up kind of for the top sleds.
107 kilometers an hour out of the Kreisel, the 360-degree corner, 66 miles an hour, up to 70.5 miles an hour.
113 speed at the bottom. You're definitely seeing the first couple sleds that come down, especially after that bit of a break. They do have four running sleds that go down to try and minimize, you know, that advantage or disadvantage of being the first one down after such a long break. But in this frost and with these weather conditions, there's really not much you can do about it.
Kaylee Humphries, the Olympic champion, watching on with the benefit of having raced in, well, not such wet conditions yesterday. This straightaway out of corner 9, you watch the front runners, Kaylee, he's doing nothing there to try and avoid those taps rather than steer.
No, it's hard because that straightaway is going to be extremely wet and extremely slick, and it's going to feel like you're hydroplaning. So you don't want to make it worse by steering and trying to fix the hits. At the same time, you know, ideally you don't want to be hitting at all. So it's the balance, and what do you do? Sometimes you steer, it can cause a huge skid, which makes it worse. Sometimes you just take the hits. He obviously chose to take the hits.
Maciej Luty of Poland, second of our 18 runners. Daniel Zaleski is the man behind him. They had a good start, 5.50. That was the 10th fastest getaway. Let's see if they can get closer to that in the second heat. 5.56, little closer. They're sliding in a BTC sled built in Latvia.
So far, having clean runs, clean lines, no major issues.
Well, now, one of the things, of course, is if you get the corners right, it all flows very smoothly. Yikes! And if you get it wrong, you get the straightaway where you're sideways all the way down it.
You do. You really got to be ginger here with your steering, and, you know, less is more. And he came at a 9, looked like a good line, just shifted across, and especially, you know, with how slick the straightaways are, you have to, you know, not be touching the sled at all, and when you hit and then try and correct it, you know, as we saw here, it causes a huge skid.
Well, he was 0.56 ahead of Milan Janaszak at his best, comes down 0.26 in front of him, 59.04. His first heat was at 58.85. So, Kaylee, empirically, you know, that's not as quick, but then the conditions are changing so much here, that may be down purely to the track.
Yeah, it's really hard to see. I mean, you can see him come at a 9 here, slight tap on the wall, and it just causes, you know, it wasn't an even tap, so you got the bunks at the front and back of the sled, and when one hits and the other one doesn't, it really just throws the sled sideways altogether, and, you know, there's not much you can do about it. Comes into 14 there, looks like he hit, gets pushed away from the beginning of this entrance, and it shoots him straight up into 14. Again, it's all just reactive stuff at that point that you're really just trying to save it the best that you can.
That's exactly what I was thinking. As a young driver, he's going to haul it off the corner there to save the crash.
Yeah, it's really hard to see, I think, with some of these, you know, lower-ranked pilots and what's going to be consistent and whether it's the track or just the driving.
Well, with Milan Janaszak moving from the leader's box, Maciej Luty of Poland has his first time in the leader's box in his young career. Next up is Michael Cerizet of Belgium. Now, did not get a great start, only 17th. Just outstarted Milan Janaszak, 5.63. Let's see if they can go any quicker. 5.61, that's a little better, second getaway. You see, these first few corners, Kaylee, so slow. If you're having a crash in a car, the lower speed, the better. But in a bobsleigh, the lower speed, the more it affects your time.
Yeah, it definitely does. And you really got to make sure that you're coming through those top corners as clean as possible.
Makes an exit from corner 9, little slide down the straight. He just held the steering straight to avoid overcorrecting.
He did. You see him whip off of Kreisel. That's a really dangerous corner, actually. It's really hard to get the timing correct. And you can see he sits very high out of the sled, and he's got his helmet way above. He's a tall guy, so it's hard to kind of cram into those little tiny spaces, but he's up there, and you can see his head just kind of whip around a little bit.
Well, the Poles move out of the leader's box, and the Belgians move in as they come across the line. 58.42, tenth of a second quicker than his first run. So two things we know. First of all, the ice is holding up. Secondly, perhaps a few less problems for Mikel there than on his first heat.
Comes out, goes late into Kreisel, misses that first pressure and controlling it. You see there he goes straight up in the second pressure where the pressure takes him up, misses steering that one, comes down, and the pressure, just no matter how hard you crank it off the corner, wants to pull you up. Goes into 13, nice control around 13. No major problems there, but his head is very high out of the sled. And aerodynamically, that's very challenging, but it's also very hard on your neck as well.
Yeah. There's not too much about this Altenberg track that is gentle on the body, is it? It's like Lake Placid, it's fairly physical. Built in a time where sleds were getting much less speed than they do now. Well, next up, Dorin Grigori of Romania, 15th place after the first heat. Again for him, first time that he has made it through into a second heat, so he could be looking at a career best result here. Started 5.54 in the first heat. Their DSG Dresden sled.
1:59 start on the second run. A bit slower. Had some issues out of corner 1. Like we said earlier, you can crash out of corner 1. It has happened on this track. It's not a corner to be taken lightly, and definitely we saw issues there. That's going to kill his time and speed the rest of the way down.
There's a couple of the turns here named after some of the most famous drivers from Altenberg. Corner 1 is named after Matthias Benisch, who now runs the track. Not because he's such a hero, he is, but because he crashed there, not once, but twice. Corner 9 named after the great Harald Tschudai. And he and Rennie Hoppe and Benisch and a lot of the German legends are all here this weekend. Okay, look, over the brow, nice and straight, Kelly, so no skids from him, and he's keeping decent speed on board.
He definitely is, and I think that's what happens. You've got good, clean, solid runs, and you're going to have this speed there. He came at a 9, had no problems down the straightaway into Kreisel, came at a 14 again, going into another straightaway down into 15. He's happy with that run. As you can see, he should be. That was generally a very clean run, and it's always the best feeling in the world to come down and to know, A, you know, you didn't lose any spots, but B, you know, you had a good run and you were able to hold it together and have a best result.
Well, top 15, and the way they're reacting to that may have very major implications, maybe for the Romanian Olympic authorities, allowing them to qualify for Sochi or maybe for funding. And they went 2/10 quicker as well, so good start, but he tidied up his act. Here's a little skid.
He did. You see him just come out of corner 1, bit high at the exit, and the steer, he just kind of released the pressure a little bit too soon. It caused him to skid off a little bit. Again, you don't have much speed going into that corner, but I'm happy.
Romanians in the leader's box. So very good news indeed for them. Next up then, Ugis Zalims of Latvia. Normally Latvia 3, but he is racing Latvia 2 this weekend. Raivis Brock's behind him. And like his teammate, Oskars Melbardis, only starting his 3rd year as a driver. Another PTC Latvia sled. 5.40 getaway. They started 5.44 in the first heat. That's the 6th quickest start. Okay, we talked about this in the first heat. In 2010, when you were winning your Olympic gold medal, he was a brakeman for Latvia, as his teammate was. Now, you know, they're just starting their driving career. There's still so much to learn for these young guys.
So much to learn. They've got years and years ahead of them of just time in a sled on these tracks, especially this track. Big waves down in through Kreisel, but he controls it nice, comes out, no major issues. big issue, kind of 11, 12.
Oh, my goodness.
Really high in 13 into 14. That is rough, and that sometimes can happen. This is where this track never quits, and you always have to be on top of it and always thinking 1 or 2 corners ahead, because they come so fast and one leads into another. And a rough transition that started that was 11, 12, and it just, you know, it's relentless until you get to that straightaway from 14 to 15.
We had to have a couple of real safety steers to haul it off the corner without using their heads. But then he still had the presence of mind over the little brow down towards 15, not to get a steer on, just to let the little drift peter out over the rise. So he's still thinking, trying to think like a driver, even if he was having a bit of a panic here, 11 to 12.
Comes down, hits before 12, back of the sled lifts up. This means you don't get on 12 at all, which causes this straightaway between 12 and 13 to be basically non-existent, and you're going in at the completely wrong angle into 13. You go straight up, pressure takes you up there, comes out again too early into 14, and it shoots you up. At this point, it's all just reaction. But he reacts correctly, and he allows the sled to let it run, to go. Was a bit dicey in through there, but you know, this is what makes him a good pilot. And he's able to keep his composure and just get out of it in any way possible, and that straightaway allows him that minute or two.
You know what they say, if you're making mistakes, it means you're out there doing it. And you don't learn by getting it right. You learn by getting it wrong. Next up, Heath Spence and Lucas Matter from Australia. They got friends and family here that are staying all the way to Sochi. And big buddies with Chris Spring, of course, former Aussie pilot who now is sliding for the Canadians. They're based up at the track as well in Calgary. 5:64 getaway.
Slower than first run.
Well, they've had to take a little bit of weight out of the sled. Lucas isn't as big as some of the, you know, behemoths like Kevin Kuska, so they're actually pushing a 200-kilo sled. That's a lot to get off the blocks.
Yeah, it really is. Weight makes a big difference here, especially on a long track such as this one. And you need that weight for the ride down, but it just means, you know, the smaller you are, the more you're having to push, and that's never fun.
700s behind at the moment in the battle with Dorin Grigore of Romania, our current leader. 108 kilometers coming off. If he gets a tidy bottom part of the track here, he might just get a chance to come back. Big skid there, though, from Heath. Over that brow where the sled gets all floaty. And this means the Romanian is going to stay in the lead, and Heath Spence drops down 4 spots. The Romanians can't believe what a good second heat they've had. Well, that's tough on the Aussies. They will still get a good result out of it.
Decent run from Heath Spence. I mean, clean lines generally, you know, those were probably some of the best runs I've seen him do all week, which is always, you know, the plan and the goal going into a race. So he should be, you know, proud of himself for getting down, you know, 2 decent runs.
Well, they've had 2 World Cup races this season in Salt Lake and Whistler, 26th and 28th.
Comes out, taps the wall there. I mean, he let it go too high in 14, and you just fall out of the corner. The pressure isn't there, and he just falls out and then hits the wall.
Photo for the fans down at the bottom. There's Heath and Stig.
You point out there for Chris Spring.
So that's almost the German for advantage, or for lead, isn't it? Vorsprung, Fear Spring, almost, not quite. Moving on. Jan Verber of the Czech Republic with Jan Stoklaska, Czech 1. They started first in the first heat. They probably had the frostiest of ice for their Singer sled, but they got some great speeds out of it. 5:48. Again, you know, they were the 7th quickest starters in the first heat, which I have to say, quite some surprise.
It is, definitely. We're not used to seeing them, you know, so high up there in the starting order. Not just start numbers, but having, you know, some of the fastest starts. And it's really great to see.
Best result of the year so far. He's only done 3 World Cup races. He was 18th in Lake Placid. Then he did the rest of the North American swing. Didn't do the last couple of races. His young teammate did those. So he is going to improve on his season's best here. 1:10.4 and a nice exit to keep that speed alive.
Overall, good run. Not much to say about it. Slight tap out of 9, but generally lines look smooth. They look clean.
Wow. And he pushes the Romanians out. And of course, We are within about 7 or 8 miles of the Czech border here, and Prague is just a little over an hour away from Altenberg, in the same way that Dresden is a little over an hour away north of us here. So this is very much home ice for the Czech team. Wouldn't be at all surprised to find that there's quite a number of friends and family have made the trip over the border, despite the rotten weather.
Comes out again, you're seeing the back of the sled lift up too aggressively, too much of a diagonal and across from corner 11 into 12, and that can be really sketchy. Corner 12, although it looks very, small and petite, can actually be a really, really rough corner and very dangerous.
Jan Verber of the Czech Republic leads from Romania's Dorin Grigore and Mikel Cerizet of Belgium. We have 11 sleds to go. Next up is Patrice Sauvel of Monaco, the bespectacled brakeman Elie Lefort, squinting there without his specs on. Doesn't need them to start. Let's see what Patrice can produce. 5:57 first getaway. If they can trim anything off that, it gives them a chance of a top 10 finish. And Patrice could definitely do with that boost in confidence. His 2 best results this year, 20th places. He's definitely missing the gargantuan power of Lascelles Brown on the back of the Monegasque sled. 5:65, not as quick as their first start, Kaylee.
No, this is definitely where Patrice suffers, and this is definitely where his Achilles heel, to say the least. This is where, races are won or lost these days, is in the start, and Patrice just isn't competitive in that area anymore, especially without Lascelles Brown, and with him moving back to Canada, it's hurting him quite bad in the overall results.
And you think, the tiny size of Monaco and the average age of most of the millionaires in Monaco isn't exactly giving them a huge pool of talent to draw athletes from.
No, Patrice knows how to drive. He's got skill, and he's been doing it for quite some time. So he's definitely one of the more experienced pilots on tour. It's really just, he loses it at the start, and that's very, very hard to gain back. On this track, it's a little bit easier than other tracks, such as Eagles or Koenigsegg, where the tracks are just too short to really gain, but it's still always a challenge.
He drifts a couple of spots away from the top 10. That leaves him in 3rd place now with 10 to go. Still, it'll be a season's best result, but that is meagre pickings for Monaco, I'm afraid. He will be looking forward to getting the St-Moritz, perhaps the only track where he's got a chance of really showing what he's got.
Few taps on the straightaway, comes at a 9, starts with a tap, and really, especially with these wet conditions on the straightaway, there's not much you can do besides just ping-pong your way down. So the key is always just to come at a 9 and head straight down without any of those, which is ideal, but generally, very hard to correct when they do happen.
Let it fly, that is the rule of bobsleigh. You can see the support there for local young hero Francesco Friedrich. We've got a while to go before he goes. 10 sleds remain in the competition here in Altenberg, Germany. Martin Haven and Olympic champion Kaylee Humphries calling the action for you. This is Dawid Kupczyk of Poland, Marcin Navarra behind him. Their teammates, Matthias Luthi and Daniel Zaleski, had their turn in the leader box. Let's see now if the more experienced Kupczyk can manage that. 5:49 getaway, just a couple of hundred slower than their first heat. He's got to tidy up a couple of errors to try and stay in that top 10. Kelly, it takes a while for the speed to build on this track. Until you get out of Omega 4, 5, you're still at a relatively slow speed before it starts to pick up down the hill.
It really does. I mean, the pressure can be fairly great the first couple corners. I mean, pressure really starts in corner 3, but the speed is still low, and it's still a fairly flat track until the straightaway from 9 down into Kreisel. You really, you can make or break a lot of what happens with any of your steering.
0.12 of a second in front of Jan Verber of the Czech Republic. So the gap has come down from 1400s to 6 and then back up to 1300s of a second. 57.81. His dad, the coach there, applauding that. A top 10 finish for Poland. Well, they haven't done that this year. Wouldn't mind betting that they haven't done that for a couple of seasons, if at all. I'm afraid my memory doesn't go far back enough. Kupchik last year on this track, 21st place. His career best last year, or his season's best, was 16th in Whistler.
Yeah, that was a nice entrance from 13 into 14. Goes high in 13, but you can let it fly, and you can let it run in through there, and it proved to work just great down into 14. From 14 to 15, a few taps on the wall. Ideally, you know, that's going to cost you a couple hundreds every single time you do it, but if you can minimize those, then you know, it didn't cost him too much time.
Lots of love there between the smaller nations. You see the Czechs and the Poles congratulating each other. Next up, another tiny nation in terms of population that punches way above its weight in sliding sports. And part of the secret for Latvia's success, of course, is having its own track at Sigulda, built by the USSR during the Cold War battles, in the same way that this was built by the DDR to try and combat the might of the USA and West Germany. Oskars Melbardis, Dauman's Triskins, 5:27, 5:24 was the fastest start in the first heat, and that may well be still the fastest in the second heat.
Yeah, I'm going to say for sure, these guys are just outstarting everybody like nobody's business. And Oskar, I mean, he's still an extremely young pilot. This is year 3 for him, and he's got a lot of room to grow, and you're really seeing it each and every run that he takes down. You see him learn, you see him get better in the driving aspect. He's going to be one to watch for sure from Sochi, but definitely for Korea.
Great for Yanis Minins in the Vancouver Games. And as you say, his 3rd season as a driver, just 23 years old, so he's got at least another decade probably before he even hits his peak.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's got the start, and the driving, it's coming.
Well, the secret with the big start is not to hit stuff on the way down, and he doubles his lead over the poles. 57.44 slide, Kaylee. That's half a second better than his first. We're talking about him being young and learning. He really learned from his mistakes in Heat 1.
He really did, and he really, you know, implemented them, put it in place. That was a smooth run. Generally, very good run. A few little things here and there, a few light little taps, but overall, you know, very nice run. He should be really happy with that.
Yeah, anytime you can get half a second quicker, you know you've tidied up your act a big proportion.
I have a feeling the track's getting a little bit faster, but generally, I mean, to go half a second, that's a big margin. So plus or minus a couple tenths maybe for the track speeding up, but generally he made some improvements, and you saw that in the time.
Bit less rain coming out of the sky. You can see most of the umbrellas are down, and that might mean a little bit of frost coming in, which might mean things slowing down for the final runners. What about Jürgen Lewacker? Well, a chance again for him to produce a good result. Another 700s in front of him is 20-year-old Loïc Kosterga France. There's Oskars Melbardis on the right, Dauman's Triskins on the left of your picture in the leader's box. Let's see if the Austrians can post their best result in a long while in men's bobsleigh. Top 8 result for Lewacker would be a big step forward. 12th place in Altenberg last year, Kaylee, in the snow. That was his best result of last season. See if he can produce the same here.
He really knows how to drive this track. I mean, starting is his weak point. He definitely is a lot smaller of a person in stature compared to some of the other pilots and brakemen, such as Oscars. And so that's where you really see disadvantage. But at the same time, he's got skill and he's got the driving hands, and he knows. And this track really favors those type of pilots. So.
Well, sponsored by a German lederhosen manufacturer, the guy that runs the family firm used to be a brakeman for the Austrians, and he's now got an ex-German brakeman on the back of the sled as well. So all sorts of over-the-border relationships between Austria and Bavaria going on, and he's having a pretty tough time of this, Kaylee. It's not a horrendous run. He hasn't hit everything in sight, but he is 6/10 slower. I wonder if the track is really starting to frost up.
Could be the track. I mean, he lost it at the start, for sure. The start's a huge advantage when he's competing against Oscars. Oscars had a great second run, and to be able to be, you know, tenths behind, 3 tenths behind at the start, it's hard to compete in that sense.
Well, they were only 800s apart in the first heat. Oscars went half a second quicker. And Jürgen, I'm afraid, went nearly 2 tenths slower. In fact, nearly 3 tenths slower. So it was a combination of, yeah, as ever in bobsleigh, a combination of everything.
Of lots of stuff. Again, decent cross. You see the brakeman jump out of the back of the sled there. That's a pretty rough transition, 11 to 12, when it's made correctly even. And so when it's not quite perfect, such as there, then it makes it a bit rough and a bit hard. Definitely saw him do that first run as well, but he made it a lot smoother for second.
Now here's an opportunity for a young driver to really put the cat among the pigeons. For France, when was the last time a French sled was A, in the top 10, B, with a chance of almost being in the top half dozen? I've got to think it's not been this century. Oh, okay, well, maybe Bruno Mijon 2002 at La Plagne. Yeah, when he won. But since then, it's been a really thin time for France. And 20-year-old Loïc Costerg gets away with a 5:51. They were 10th fastest in the first heat with a 5:50. Drove themselves into 7th. He had a really smooth run, and he is doing the same again. Has he been pumped with some DNA from Bruno Mijon?
Possibly, we'll see. I mean,
wow,
great run from him so far. He's
but where is the speed
really
going?
Great.
He's 3 tenths down.
I think
Half
we're
a
starting to
second.
see that frost come back. The rain goes away, temperature, you know, temperature's up, and that's one of those things that you just can't control.
Look at the ice. It's no longer glistening with water. It is matte with frost. And that means that the runners are sticking to it. He is half a second down, even though he's got better speed than the current leaders, Oskars Melbardis and Daumans Driskens. And that is a real disappointment for the French. And that was taken out of their hands. I mean, still, he is going to get, a top 10 finish. And for him, 20 years old, that's a massive, massive step. But it would have been so much better.
Yeah, it's always hard to come down and know you dropped a couple places. That's never, ever a great feeling. At the same time, he will be very happy with that result when he gets to look back. But, you know, weather on this track sometimes, it's very frustrating because there's not much you can do and you can't control it. Comes out of 11, you know, little bit rough in 12, hauls it down a little bit. Comes out of 14 there, hits the wall. You can see him trying to kind of straighten it out, has a big skid. I mean, that's going to cost him at least 2 tenths right there just with that one alone. So he had a few driving mistakes, but definitely, you know, with the track, the condition that it's in, it's hard for the tracker to keep it up at the same time. It is.
You're trying to second guess the weather, and it's changing all the time. So
you never know.
Exactly right. Well, next up we have a tie for 5th position. Simone Bertazzo of Italy and John Jackson of Great Britain. Jacko goes second because Bertazzo tied him. There's Daumans Driskens getting a bit of Gangnam style in the leader's box. That's the first and hopefully the last time we'll ever see that on TV. Let's see what the Italians can produce. It's going to be interesting. I'll watch the speeds, you watch the walls and see what he touches on the way down. 5:41. Now that's a good getaway. He knows the pressure's on.
That is. He's up there with, you know, the top people pushing, and that's something that we haven't seen from him all year. But definitely, you know, if he continues this and even he'll try and get a little bit faster, I mean, it puts him in among everybody else.
He's gone from 1400s up to 200s back without touching anything. He'll be a third of a second down at the Kreisel. Where's the speed? 109. Melbardis had 109 as well. 1800s back. And this is, you know, as close to a perfect drive as you can get. He's doing nothing. 1:16.5, better speed than the Latvian sled, and he is still losing time. He will not take the lead. The Latvians have lucked in the perfect window in the weather. They had the least worst of the conditions.
They definitely did. You saw him hold the speed, though, and he held the time from corner 9 all the way down, but it was before corner 9. That's where when I say the top of the track really makes a difference. That's the part that, you know, you make one little mistake. Not that I saw one from Simone, but you make one little mistake at the top and you're not able to recover. He held the bottom and, you know, his time proved it, but it's every little bit at the top.
2800s in front from the first heat. He lost all of that and a further 1400s to go behind into second place. With 5 sleds to go, he will still get a top 7 finish.
Yeah, this track sometimes it's really frustrating with speeds and times, and sometimes you just don't really know. And so, you know, you do what you can. So far, fastest speed by the bottom, but definitely at the top had the slowest. And that's where the time was definitely lost.
Well, let's see now how high up the order Oskars Melbardis can reach. He was 9th after Heat 1. He leads with 5 to go. Could he get on the podium? He was a second off the lead in Heat 1. But the weather has changed and the track has changed with it. So what does that mean for Great Britain's John Jackson and David Coleman? First race together. They started slightly disappointing 5:55. Let's see if they can find a few hundreds in the second start.
They're definitely going to need to if they have any chance of beating Oskars Melbardis. They're ahead for sure by 3/10, or a tenth now, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
But that start from Melbardis, I mean, it really puts him ahead of stuff. Those 2 hits out of 12, out of 2, those are going to kill his top speed for sure.
Even in perfect conditions, taps out of 2 are going to really hurt you, and it has hurt him. He's 3/10 of a second back.
Yeah, it drops 2/10 instantaneously just by those 2 hits, 1/10 each.
Needs to have 110 into the Kreisel. It's 107. Really struggling for speed.
You're going to see him drop, I think, quite a few spots.
Yeah, 6/10 back. He's now 7 places back from where he started at the top of the run.
He's not going to be very happy with this run in general. A few little hits, few little things here and there. He's kind of all over the place, and the starts just weren't quite where they needed to be for today.
Wow, 58.65 slide. That's very nearly a second slower than his first run. More mistakes, definitely. And of course, Kaylee, as the track surface changes, the feel of the steering is totally different. It does totally different things when you do the same movements.
Yeah, it definitely does. When it starts to frost up and you're used to it being slicker, you're trying to be a little more ginger with it. It frosts, now you have control. It makes it very challenging, and that's where experience as a pilot comes in. You saw him come out of 9, hit the wall, and he's, you know, just trying to recover as he goes into Kreisel. And that's challenging. That straightaway used to be a little bit slicker. Now you've got a little bit more control. The rain has, you know, lessened, and it can be a challenge.
Well, tough weekend for Great Britain. Paul Walker crashed out of a podium position in the women's race. John Jackson slumps from 5th to 12th in the men's race. Next up, the battle for the podium. 4 sleds to go. Mani Mahata trying to make it a German sweep of the podium positions. Christian Poser, he is 200ths in the first heat behind Lyndon Rush, who lay 3rd. Good getaway, 5:47.
100th faster than first run. That's as consistent and, you know, the best of the possible positions.
Let's see 2 things. First of all, if he can throw down a threat for the podium, and secondly, if he can somehow stay in front of Oskars Melbardis.
Who's got 3/10 up right now. We'll see as this next speed clock comes down, comes nice out of 9. Now that the pilots have a little bit more control in 9 and kind of down that straightaway, you really see Manu take advantage of that, and that's where his experience as a pilot is really playing in. He knows the conditions are changing, and he's adjusting his driving accordingly.
Good speeds as well, 117.7. You wouldn't think the conditions are any different the way that he is driving them from everybody else, and takes a big step towards the podium. 57.44. Yes, Christoph Langen should look happy with that. He ousts the Latvians from the leader's box, but Melbardis will end up with a top 5 finish at worst. His best this year was 4th in Salt Lake.
That was a very, very nice run for Manu. That, yeah, that's probably the nicest run we've seen all day, in all fairness.
Again, Mani's best 2-man result this season was in Lake Placid, 4th spot. So he'll at least match that, but that was a shot for the podium for certain.
It definitely was. They gave it everything they had at the start. Manu drove really well. I mean, it's going to be a challenge for Lyndon for sure. Germany really wants that 1, 2, 3 spot, so we'll see what Lyndon can do. It's the bar was set pretty high, but generally, you know, it's, yeah, Manu set himself up well.
Little drop off the end of the corner there, testimony to how much he's trying to let the sled fly. So next up then, Canada won. 3rd place after Heat 1, Lyndon Rush and Les Ellis Brown. Fourth fastest at the start, and with the Latvians busting the 5:29 start out, you know that Lascelles-Brown on the back handles will be looking to get them down as close to 5.3 flat as he can.
And you see Lascelles, he's got the visor. The brakeman has a visor on his helmet. We're not used to seeing that in 2-man. In 4-man, definitely you've got the number 2 guy that uses the visor, but Lascelles has opted for a visor today. Aerodynamically, makes a difference.
Let's see what they can produce. This is a chance to get himself onto the 2-man podium. Lyndon Rush currently lies 3rd in the World Cup standings. His last 3 results, silver, bronze, gold in the 2-man.
Not quite sure why they're waiting so long at the top. They've
Well,
got
the green light is on.
20 seconds left. They're waiting for something up there. It's unusual that we see them wait that long. Normally you want to get the sled down and get going right away. So they're waiting for something, maybe for the wind to die or a different type of weather condition. His push bar was up for a while. It's still up now. That needed to come down a while ago. It was up all the way around 1, but
5:37 getaway, right where they were in the first heat, within 100th of a second. He has the lead by 12 hundredths over Mani Mahata. 11. Don't forget, they were just 200ths of a second apart in heat 1.
Comes down, you can see Lyndon trying to control it, still a little bit squirrely, but because that straightaway has frosted up a little bit, he's able to control it a little bit better.
109 to 110, 109 out to 111 of Mahata. The gap's right down to 400ths of a second. Mahata was 117 at the bottom. Lyndon is not going to finish on the podium here on this run. Mahata will stay in the leader's box ahead of Lyndon Rush of Canada and has a medal guaranteed. And that one slips away a little.
It definitely does. I think where Lyndon lost it was out of corner 9. Didn't have as clean of a 9 as Manu Mahata did. He came out of 9 dead straight, went perfect into Kreisel. That's really where you take the speed for the whole bottom of this section of this track. And Lyndon struggled a little bit, tried to correct it, and all those little tiny corrections, couple hundredths here or there. But, I mean, to lose by less than a tenth, that definitely, I think, was where it happened.
Yeah, tiniest of margins between them. Outstarting Mahata and Christian Poser by a tenth of a second. And again, not the greatest load from Lascelles-Brown.
No, and it did take him a while to get that push bar down. I'm not sure if that's Lyndon or Lascelles' job.
Wow.
Could be either one.
Francesco Friedrich doing exactly the opposite of Lyndon Rush, busting out right from the moment the light goes green. And a 5:23 getaway. Oh, he doesn't mean business at all, does he?
No, I mean, yeah, they're gunning for it. They want that gold position bad, and he wants to win. But definitely weird. Different tactics from Lyndon versus Friedrich.
Well, this is the first of 2 local heroes here. He is the double junior world champion 2 and 4-man. He won in December at Eagles, Austria. And
nice straightaway.
Yeah, great run. 8/10 up on Lyndon Rush, but it's on Mani Mahata, but it's not about Mani. It's about trying to beat Thomas Florschutz, the other local boy on this track.
He is having a great run so far. He's letting it run. You can see it in the waves and in the driving, but it just comes out and it looks smooth and effortless. And I mean, he's going for it. He's really set the bar high for Thomas Florschutz here. And, you know, we'll see what he can do. 57:15 downtime. That is a great run.
We have Germany 1-2, the green colours of Saxony on the sled of Francesco Friedrich as he leads, and that is a big challenge to Thomas Florschutz. Well, Francesco comes from Pirna, which is about 15 kilometres west of Altenberg. Very much a hometown boy. And very much, you've got to say, the future of German bobsledding as well. He's got all the starry glitter around him that the likes of Mani Mahata had when he first arrived in the World Cup. So what can Thomas Florschutz do then? He won the 2-man race last year in driving snow. He might have to do the same here in what was driving rain and has now turned back into a misty drizzle, and that actually might take some of the frost off the track and be an advantage for these last couple of runners, for Friedrich and for Florschutz. Of course, the other advantage that Thomas has is that helmet there. not the helmet, but the body that is below it, of Kevin
beast of a
Kuska.
man behind, definitely. He has been, and I think will continue to be a legend within the sport from the breakman position.
Absolutely. Kevin Kuska behind Thomas Florschutz. They start in 5.30. Like Friedrich, a whisker quicker than their first getaway.
They want the win just as bad, and they're both going for it. Pushing hard at the start, and you know, so far Thomas is having, you know, a really nice run. We'll see what we can do. We still, I mean, we're only on corner 5.
1500ths of a second behind Francesco Friedrich. He was only 400ths in front from the first heat. The younger German, 109.9 exiting the Kreisel. 110.4 in. What's he got on the way out? Does he get a good exit? He does. 111. Okay, now we're going to see that gap coming down.
1700s. I mean, Francesco didn't make a mistake down at the bottom, but neither is Thomas. They're both
Top
clean.
speed, 700s, 3 corners remain. He'll stitch them all together to take victory here for Germany. No, it's a double gold. The best possible result for Christoph Langen, but especially for the local fans. Neither of their men lost. That's an unbelievable story for the fans here and for the track workers in Altenberg. Both their local heroes win the race.
It really doesn't get any better than that.
I can't
Over 2
believe
runs.
that. If you wrote that, a Hollywood script editor would throw it back in your face.
Still amazes me that over 2 runs and all of that track, all that start difference, everything, and it is possible to pack.
Fantastic stuff. Victory again for Thomas Florschutz and victory for Francesco Friedrich. Wow. Okay, bust out another set of trophies, because there's going to be 4 big men on the top step of the podium on a Saturday. Sandra Kyriasis offers her congratulations. She took the silver medal in yesterday's women's race on her birthday. And of course, this is hometown for her as well, born and bred in Dresden. There's another Dresdner in the red jacket, Ron Ringuth, who'll be chatting to them later. And there are 2 of your 4 winners. Francesco Friedrich. You've got to say, his brakeman, Janis Becker, is not exactly tiny either, is he?
No, all those Germans, they're all big, and yeah, it's they've always been a force to be reckoned with this sport, and they will continue to be, as we see here today. 2
straight wins on this track in World Cup races in 2 years for Thomas Florschutz. So he's looking pretty happy. There you go, there's your 2 winners. Well, 14 years separate them, but no hundreds of a second. And the question is then, who do you show in the replay? Both of them.
You really do. I mean, their lines don't differ that much, in all fairness.
Yeah.
Sled looks a little different, but generally their lines are really close, and both had amazing runs. Really, really great and powerful starts from both of them. Yeah, they're both going to be ecstatic.
Late Christmas present for the fans and for the coach, Christoph Langen. Double Jarl day for him. You can't argue with that. And again, the green of Saxony on both sleds. And of course, for British fans, there's a degree of association with the Saxons over many, many years, many centuries. The Angles and the Saxons took over from the Celts in Great Britain as the dominant language and force. Thomas Florschutz and Francesco Friedrich, inseparable in the 2-man race. Manny Mahata, 6/10 behind, completes the German sweep of the podium ahead of Lyndon Rush and Oskars Malbardis. What a big day for him, 5th spot. We'll be back with their words right after this.
Vielleicht kennen ihn ja einige, das ist also da vorne der Mann ohne Mütze. Und wir versuchen ihn mal einzufangen. Wer kennt den Film Cool Tricks? Wer hat schon den Film Cool Runnings gesehen? Hände hoch, alle Hände hoch. Da gibt es einen einzigen Mann, der sich selbst spielt. Und der steht da vorne. John Morton spielt auf den Kommentator. Und er war tatsächlich 1988 bei den Olympischen Spielen der Kommentator, als das jamaikanische Boxteam erstmalig aufgetaucht ist. Also der wird hier gleich die Interviews mit den Jungs in Englisch machen. Und dann schauen wir mal, ob wir hier den einen oder anderen ranbekommen. Und dann noch gleich in den Grad die Siegerehrung. So, Martin, wir müssen sicherlich auch noch auf den Weg machen. Hierher.
Testing, test.
Schönen Dank, der Präsident also des BSC und Vizepräsident auch der FIBB, also des Internationalen Sportverbandes. So, haben wir jetzt noch München schon? Nein, noch nicht. Also wir müssen dann auch noch ein bisschen...
Damp but happy fans in Altenberg, Germany. The DKB Ice Canal World Cup number 6 has seen a tie for the victory. Lyndon Rush takes over the lead of the World Cup standings. He was third this morning. He now heads Stephen Holcomb, Manny Mahata, and Alexander Zubkov, who was second, drops down to 6th place. What a difference a day makes. Well, what a difference 2 runs make. Nothing at all between the junior world champion Francesco Friedrich and last year's race winner Thomas Florschutz, much to the delight of coach Christoph Langen. They tied for the gold medal, inseparable to the 100th of a second over 2 runs down this demanding Altenberg track. Olympic champion Kaylee Humphries alongside me here in the booth. Kaylee, just too close to call, and in the end, too close to even separate them.
Yeah, it really was. It's great to see the 2 guys from here at the top of the track for the Germans. You know, they needed a win badly, and they got it here this weekend by Kathleen and by Francesco and by Thomas. So that's exciting to see for them.
Well, let's get down and hear what they think. They're with John Morgan.
Okay, the flower ceremony. Rainer Jacobus, the Vice President of the German Federation, coming in with Wolfgang Launt also. Wolfgang Launt, the longtime organizer of events in Altenberg, and Rainer Jacobus. And now we go over to our 3rd place medalist. Hey, so Manuel, a 3rd place bronze medal here in Altenberg. You have to be happy.
Yeah, of course, we're real happy. So it was the best success in this season for us in 2Man. We're looking forward to the next races and try to push a little harder and be better, probably.
Well, it's a good way to start the 2013 season. Now we go to the tie. I don't know who to interview first here, but hey, this is your first gold medal in competition. This must be a great day for you.
Yes, here in Altenberg in home track, we do a good job on start, and track was good, little mistakes, and so we can win this race.
Congratulations, enjoy the moment. Now, last time a gold medal, Thomas, here 1 year ago in 2Man Bobsled. Still a gold medal.
Ja, ich bin froh, dass es endlich soweit ist. Wir haben jetzt eine lange Durststrecke hinter uns. Ich glaube, ein ganzes Jahr seit der Europameisterschaft letztes Jahr, wo es für uns so schlecht geendet hat. Und wir sind jetzt wieder da, wo wir hingehören. Und wir sind echt froh, dass es jetzt hier ist und dass es endlich geklappt hat.
Well, he's very happy from the long season he had last year to where he is now. And, you know, a gold medal. It's a long ways back.
Back from injury here last year in the 4-man race to claim a double victory. And he was saying, great for the people here in Altenberg, for the fans, for the workers, to be able to take both of the local crews to the top of the pile. Well, for John Morgan, on behalf of Kaylee Humphries, alongside me in the booth, and all the FIBT TV crew, I'm Martin Haven saying goodbye, and thank you for joining us here in Altenberg. Next time out, they'll be in Königssee in Bavaria. And don't forget, you can find all you need to know about the sport on FIBT.com.